Bună ziua, sunt Bogdan Alecu și bine ați venit la o nouă emisiune ESG Cum Construim România, realizată de Ziarul Financiar și CBRE. Discutăm astăzi despre producție industrială, metalurgie, dar și despre ESG și emisii de carbon. O avem alături de noi invitată pe Alina Bordei, Head of ESG în cadrul companiei de consultanță imobiliară CBRE, și pe Carlo Beltrame, CEO al Donalam Călăraș, dar care are și un combinat în Târgoviște și, desigur, parte a conglomeratului Beltrame. Bună ziua, mulțumesc că sunteți alături de noi. Mulțumesc, Bogdan.
Mulțumesc.
Vom face atât în română cât și în engleză. Încep cu tine, Alina. Te rog, explică-ne care este situația în ceea ce privește producția industrială și amprenta de carbon. Cât de important este în Europa să avem această amprentă de carbon cât mai scăzută?
Din ce în ce mai important, și putem face asta din momentul în care plănuim să construim ceva, după aceea în operare și, evident, la sfârșitul duratei de viață a construcțiilor. Folosind materiale care au o amprentă mică, după aceea în operare, având grijă să ținem consumurile de energie cât mai jos, este impactul clădirilor, cum se știe, undeva la 40% de emisii de carbon vin din mediul construit. Astfel, e important ca și materialele pe care le folosim să fie cu o amprentă cât mai mică.
Dar în ceea ce privește producția, ok, se face cu emisie scăzută de CO2, dar care sunt avantajele?
Avantajele...
Și dacă ne poți explica cum este și pe o altă piață, vest-europeană, spre exemplu.
Avem, atunci când construim, materiale cum sunt cele de construcție, beton, oțel, care vin cu o amprentă mare încorporată. Ca să putem să fim cât mai compliant, să respectăm criteriile de protecție a mediului impuse prin toate programele europene, toate aceste materiale trebuie să aibă o amprentă cât mai mică. Astfel, alegând să folosim 12% este amprenta încorporată în construcție, amprenta de CO2. Cu cât amprenta materialelor pe care le folosim este mai mică, asta ajută la scăderea amprentei globale.
Dar avantaje financiare în România avem?
Avantaje financiare nu, în prezent, dar din ce în ce mai mult legislația ne va duce în direcția aia. Chiar se lucrează acum la modificarea legislației aferente performanței energetice a clădirilor și va încorpora LCA-ul, amprenta de carbon la nivel de durată de viață a unei clădiri. Deci, cam asta e direcția.
Mulțumesc. Carlo, we'll switch now to the industry. You've said that the market is not going well. I've read your interviews with ZF you gave this year. Things were not doing great. Could you explain for us a bit how's the market and how's the production in Târgoviște and Călăraș?
The market is not certainly going well, mainly due to structural costs of Romania, but at all European level. And that is the first element, energy specifically, or gas. From the other side, the import are squeezing, not to say destroying, the marginality of the industry. Import in the steel industry overweight today almost 30% of the market share, when we were used to have between 10 and 12.
And when you say imports, you mean from outside the EU?
Certainly outside the EU. When I'm talking about import, Europe, from my point of view, is a single market. Doesn't have any customs. So right now, when I'm talking about import, is China, Turkey, Maghreb. They are not playing with the same level playing field, so they doesn't have that well restriction in terms of environment, restriction in terms of law for employees, health and safety. So it's much more difficult to compete with them. Let's say impossible to compete with them.
How do you do it in Western Europe, and how do we do it in Romania when it comes to imports and helping the local producer, local manufacturer?
Actually, other countries in Europe put in place certain state aid to help the industry to sustain their cost, to be more competitive, especially for energy. Actually, all the countries in Europe did that. I think that the only one that didn't implement a sustainable state aid was Romania. Last year, the most expensive country in Europe for energy was Romania. How can we do that? How we can transform this environment in a sustainable one on the long term? Is just protecting our industry, meaning reducing the impact of unfair competition from abroad, meaning protectionism. Till several years ago, protectionism was a taboo, was something, a word not to use in the economy. Today, I think that doesn't exist a country that doesn't use it. Europe is one of the most open to trading in all over the world. Just to make an example, we are listening and hearing a lot of voice about scrap. Europe and America are the only countries that are exporting scrap without any limitation. All the rest of the world is blocking the export of scrap because it's a resource.
Yeah.
So as a resource, has to be kept.
Including Romania? How much do we export scrap metal?
I think 70% of our production. So the production of steel in Romania in 90, let's say during 90 was almost 12 million tons of steel. Today, this year, I think we're going to reach last year less than 2 million. This year, I think that we're going to be 1.2 million, 10 times less in 20 years. Not competitive industry.
Why do we have such low volumes?
Because we are not competitive. In the Romanian industry, few exceptions, left, doesn't invest. Didn't invest, is not investing. So when you are not investing, this is an industry very capital intensive, meaning that you are investing for the next 20 years. Mm-hmm. We are investing millions of euros in an industry where an average marginality for the past 20 years was around 4 to 5%. So you can imagine that the amortization, depreciation, that respective investment is very long. What we are looking for is stability. No, we can do industry in Europe, of course we can do, but we have to be a sustainable industry. We are focusing on sustainability, on environment, footprint of CO2, reduction of electricity, reduction of gas consumption, reduction of water consumption. We never talk hearing about water consumption. That is the next year too. So all these kind of things was already faced. We invested in the past 5 years 400 million at the group level, where 80% was on ESG. Nevertheless, it's not sustainable from an economical point of view. So today we are receiving steel from China at the same price of my raw material. Impossible to compete.
And how do you compete? How do you make a business out of this in this scenario?
There are different cost structure countries. So we have most developed country like France that put in place a lot of state aid to support the industry, okay, because believe in the reindustrialization of France, understood that the model of global economy is not sustainable on the long run. Understood that they need industry, but has to be a sustainable industry. So meaning, they put in place not just for reducing the cost of production, but also to support the industry with investment for decarbonization. So to obtain at the end of the process a very sustainable industry, but in the meantime you have to protect. I always make the example of United States. 20 years ago, United States had let's say the oldest technology in the steel industry. After the implementation of the 232, so the Trump first mandate protectionism, today all the profit that will rise from this protectionism was reinvested. Today, United States has the most sustainable steel industry in the world.
That's why they afford not to have any more imports.
Yeah, no, actually they block the import, meaning everybody at that time was claiming they block the import, all the steel producers will make huge profit. not huge, of course, sustainable profit. Sustainable is meaning in a range of 10%. When you have investment that take over 8% of your profit for depreciation, meaning that you need to invest to be more sustainable. Sustainable, you need to keep investing, keep investing, keep investing. So you need to generate cash flow. They generate cash flow because the import was almost blocked, and they reinvest this cash flow to transform their industry. Now they have a sustainable industry. They make profit and they keep investing.
How do you see what changes are necessary in the European model?
Was launched.
Is the US a good model for us when it comes to steel industry?
But look, US was producing from blast furnace for NAL almost 80% 20 years ago. 80% of the output was by blast furnace. Very CO2 intensive. Today, 78% is by electrical furnace. Very sustainable. How they did that? They protect their market. Another claim that I hear so often is the fact that, okay, you protect the market, you create an effect of inflationary. So the cost will rise up, true. Now the real question is how much does this increase of cost affect the population? Does this increase of cost create a real inflation? Absolutely not. So the impact of steel in a construction, let's say in a normal villas for 150 square meter, in the cost structure is around between 5 and 6%. Actually, even less today with the actual price. If I rise up 100 euro per ton, my steel product, the impact will be 5-6%. The impact is zero. Doesn't have impact on inflation.
How much did you invest in Târgoviște?
Up to now, just in Târgoviște, from 2021 we invested 120 million more or less.
Was it a good investment?
On the long run, not today. All the time, as I told you, you cannot measure steel industry in a quarter or yearly basis. We are not the kind of industry for private equity or hedge fund. We are measuring in 5, 10, 20 years. This is a country that needs to be built. This is a country that needs infrastructure, that needs houses. So there is no production in Romania for construction steel, for rebar. Just for example, Italy has a consumption of more or less 4 million tons. So let's say 2 times, a little bit more than 2 times Romanian consumption, but that has 6 million ton capacity installed for producing this. Romania has 0 capacity installed, just us.
Because you were very optimistic at first, 4 years ago when we had our first discussion about this investment and the potential of the market.
It's still optimistic about the potential of the market. I'm not optimistic, so I became a little bit more realistic considering the market scenario right now. Market scenario is where I compete with Turkey, I compete with Algeria, I compete with Vietnam, with Egypt, where first, they are selling in their own market at much higher price. They are selling in Europe very, very, very cheap. Not tracking, no quality of the product. So it's true, there are very serious producers in those countries, but cannot grant the quality of the product that is entering this country. Romania is the single country in all Europe that doesn't have its own homologation for steel. Nevertheless, it's one of the countries that has very high earthquake risk.
Yes.
Yeah. So why we are importing in Romania such huge quantity of material without knowing where it's coming from, without having the certainty of the quality of the product, putting in danger the construction that we are building. That is the reality. We are importing material that not cover the requirement of the country.
There's a safety issue.
Absolutely.
And we were discussing about the green component. Okay, yep. Now this problem with the CO2 seems a lot smaller when we were just discussing earthquakes. and the structure of buildings. But nonetheless, at first you put a huge impact about the CO2 emissions and having electric furnaces.
We are still putting. That is priority number one. Still priority number one. So now, I'm glad that Alina was saying for the first time I'm participating to several panel and I never hear about embedded emission. Embedded emission are key. So now we are talking about embedded emission for construction industry. So in the life cycle of an apartment, between 30 and 40% is embedded emission, steel, concrete, cement. Where nobody is talking about, where nobody is caring, there is no incentives right now for embedded emission, but hopefully, and now I'm passing to the most optimistic part, that is something that's going to change, most probably driven by green public procurement. So there was published 3-4 weeks ago, the Steel and Metal Action Plan, 5 pillars. One of the main pillars is to create a market, a lead market for this kind of product. That was, I think, the first mistake of the European community. The European community has to create first the market, and after that put in place the system to be sustainable. So the market is the real key. If we will succeed to create a market, not just on public procurement, but of course also on the private sector. And here we need the help of the bank. So I remember that was some incentive, there is still some incentive for the greenhouses. The bank gives some subvention on the mortgage for greenhouses. The definition at that time, and still the definition of greenhouses, is low level of electricity consumption, gas consumption. So the day-to-day emission. Nobody, again, talk about embedded emission. It's like I was discussing with the COO of a big automotive industry, and they were claiming the fact that they were investing a lot in ESG. And they say, what kind of investment you are taking in ESG? We are making the photovoltaic panel in all over our plant. And they say, but I think that this is be considered in their scope 1 of emission. In reality, 95% of their emission is scope 3, so embedded emission. The steel that they are receiving, the component they are receiving, if they are not made from sustainable steel, they will still have very high level of emission, independently if they put photovoltaic or not.
So we must go into depth.
Absolutely.
Of the problem.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carlo. Alina, am văzut aceste probleme cu care se confruntă industria. Nu este mai greu acum să discutăm de ESG?
Da, ai dreptate, Bogdan. Noi, ca și companie de real estate, analizăm în principiu clădirile în care au loc activitățile de care vorbea Carlo. Și atât de producție cât și de logistică, din ce în ce mai mult investitorii caută să implementeze totuși criteriile de ESG, pentru că altfel nu pot accesa finanțări avantajoase, nu pot avea clienți, chiriași care au deja cerințele lor de sustenabilitate. E clar, viitorul se îndreaptă în direcția asta și având în vedere că suntem în familia europeană care are aceste instrumente, de la Pactul Verde, EU Taxonomy și CSRD-ul, care, cum știm, este aplicabil de anul acesta.
Ce putem face? Se poate face un lobby mai puternic pentru a copia modelul vest-european când vine vorba de subvenții pentru energie? Sau nu? Pentru că mai avem și un exemplu bun peste ocean când vine vorba de producție locală. Din punctul nostru de vedere, Trump poate nu este cel mai bun președinte, dar poate pentru americani este.
Cu siguranță nu mă pronunț cum este pentru americani și statul poate să facă mai mult, de la implementarea legislației, directivelor, regulamentelor europene, dar într-adevăr, cum spunea și Carlo, să susținem și producția și economia locală.
Mulțumesc. Carlo, back to the production. How many employees do you have now in Călăraș and Târgoviște?
More or less 600.
in both.
Yeah. Cumulated.
Yeah. And is there any problem with the workforce? Do you have enough employees?
Yeah. No problem.
So the energy is the main issue at hand.
The energy is certainly the main issue in terms of cost structure. The other main issues is the import, yes.
The import. When it comes to, can you give us an example of a country in Western Europe? How do they do, and how much subsidy they give?
The example that I make before, referring to Italy, the example, for example, Italy 2024 has the highest price on the ahead market, the highest price in all Europe. But they put in place several state aid to support the heavy industry. At the end, the price that the heavy industry was paying of the energy-intensive industry was half of the day-ahead market price. But let's say that Italy or France or Spain are rich countries, and we cannot apply the same state aid that those countries can afford from a fiscal perspective. What I don't understand is why, certainly not a rich country as Romania, like Bulgaria, for example, has a state aid that give them an advantage of 50% compared to the Romania price. How they can afford, I don't know. Why we cannot afford, that's another question where I don't have an answer.
How much do you export?
From Târgoviște, it's 0. From Caladaș, 85%.
So we have a local market.
For the rebar or cell beton, absolutely. My target was to produce for the local market. Local market in Romania is consuming between 1 and 1.5 million tons. 100% imported till last year. We are here to fill that gap. To fill that gap with a quality of product that can guarantee resilience in terms of construction industry. Tracking, resiliency, quality. That is one of the reasons why we are working together with university to develop a local Romanian standard, not the standard from EU, but standard for Romanian, for the Romanian land. Because the Romanian land is not the same as Bulgaria, it's not the same as Italy, more closer to Italy, of course, more closer to Greece. So as per peculiarity, that has to be respected. And you have to produce the product that respect those peculiarities.
In terms of quality of steel, what are the differences between what you produce here and Italy, for example?
No difference. The shape, yes, but quality, no difference. So we are producing the same kind of quality.
Okay. And the main issue is we don't control the quality of the imports.
You don't control the quality of the import? Absolutely not. You don't control the source of the import. You don't have any clue where it's coming from. There is no marking, there is no tracking. Even if it told you that there is not, because we don't have custom controlling that can afford to control all those imports. Let's check what's happening in Greece, that has the same problem of earthquake that has Romania. They are controlling vessel by vessel. Every vessel is controlled. Every vessel is staying on the port without downloading until a mechanical test is taking over on the material. If the mechanical test is not passing, the vessel cannot download. If the vessel cannot download, come back to the producer. Actually, go back to the producer. That is what happened.
Yeah, because that's a safety issue.
Absolutely, for the people. And the safety issue in the construction industry, if you don't have the cement, the concrete, the rebar, the steel, that is properly made for a country that has seismic risk, can be a problem.
And you said earlier, is the difference like 1 to 4 between the market in Romania and the one in Italy?
Yeah.
Why
In terms
so,
of consumption, you mean?
Yeah. Why so big? Of course, Italy has a much larger population,
Definitely.
but not that much.
60 million.
3 times, but it's 4 times almost.
Yeah, but GDP of Italy is
Much higher.
no, 8 times.
can we go? When do you think we can reach the same percentage? To be 3 times bigger, not 4 times like Italy, but 3 times.
Italy has more during the development, so now still is in equilibrium between consumption, so it doesn't have to build all the infrastructure that Romania has to build.
We have to build highways.
Oh, we have to build a lot. Railways, highways, a lot. Port, all the infrastructure, and that's give me hope, of course. But nevertheless, it's not an overnight process. It's a long-term process that Romania has to manage, of course. Well, we can reach that kind of pro capita consumption, I think, in the next 3 to 5 years, depending on the evolution of the market.
Not so long.
No. But because we have a very, very high focus on infrastructure. Now I'm becoming very optimistic that in the next 5 years, that will become the priority of Romania, so infrastructure.
We're building highways.
Look, you will see, maybe when you are traveling to Italy, you are traveling to France, you see the level of infrastructure that they have there, no? Okay, maybe I'm Italian, I don't want to talk about Italy, but let's talk about France. You're traveling in France, the level of highway, you can make, I don't know, 500 kilometers in 5 hours, 4 hours. Here, if I want to go to Blasov, okay. If I want to go, that is a place I love, Maramureș, last time it took me 10 hours. 10 hours. That is a place that is amazing. Well, you know what is the setback of the lack of infrastructure? Beside the industry, that of course has a setback on the industry, the lack of logistic facilities create a setback. But also tourism. You have an amazing place in Romania, but why I have to spend 10 hours in the car to arriving there? 10 hours. In Italy, in 10 hours, I make 2 times Italy. In France, I go from north to south in 10 hours. Less than 10 hours.
Yeah.
Much less.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
But you pay more.
Absolutely.
You have taxes on the highway.
Absolutely.
But you also pay for safety.
We also increase the salary of the people. The salary of the people in Romania will increase. It's inevitable. But that's to increase the proportion with the effort that the Romanian government will spend on infrastructure to create a business environment that can afford those salaries. It's normal to increase the salary. And increasing the salary doesn't mean that costs more. Increase that the people that have more money can spend more money. Then you can increase the salary, you can increase the inflation rate, but it's normal. The only problem is to create the environment to do that.
How do you see the Romanian economy? We have a high deficit, but it's growing a bit, 0.9% last year, but still on the plus side.
Romanian economy, first of all, you have a very low level of debt, still, in comparison with other countries like Spain, Italy, France, that are very well developed, but with huge debt in comparison with their GDP. The problem, from my point of view, is the internal growth. So this deficit highlight again the missing local production. We need to produce something, not just services. We need to produce goods. We need to produce goods for export, for local economy, reducing the dependency from import. So in certain sectors, we are 100% importing. That's, I think, is the key. So not to constrain the economy, but to enlarge the economy, the real economy.
Because, for example, this week we had reindustrialization of Romania, the event, and this was the main topic, that we, like you said, we import too much.
Yeah.
We need local production and the integration of chains, because
Absolutely.
we don't have everything for one production. There was one example. We produce milk, but we sell it in glass bottles made in Germany. We import the glass bottle, put milk in it, and put it on the shelf in the store.
I think, yeah, that's a good example. Also, automotive is another good example.
We have steel from Slovakia and Italy in our cars, in Dacia and Ford.
Yeah, absolutely. Local production is the key, I told you. And the government should focus certainly on infrastructure development. That's the first priority. And second, to reindustrialize the economy. But actually, it's not something that we are saying, yeah, I'm inventing. All the countries are doing so. French is reindustrialization project 2030. Italy the same, Spain the same. All the countries are focusing on reindustrialization. Understanding the weak point on the global economy. We were living a dream for the past 20 years, thinking that, okay, I can produce my T-shirt in China because it costs less, my shoes in Vietnam because it costs less, I can produce my bearing steel because it costs less. No, it doesn't cost less. It costs less just because they put in place state aid to sustain their industry. Cost less at what cost? Cost less. Cost that we succeed to keep in Europe the salary blocked because we were importing cheap goods. That is the cost of costing less. We are not developing. We are standing. We are still standing.
Thank you, Carlo. Alina, la finalul discuției, cum putem echilibra situația din punctul vostru de vedere, astfel încât să avem și producție, dar și să protejăm mediul și să avem această strategie de ESG?
În primul rând, cum am spus și mai devreme, vine de la toți stakeholderii implicați. Atâta timp cât vreau să dezvolt, dar o fac cu costuri mari, s-ar putea să mă gândesc de 2 ori. Însă în condițiile în care băncile îmi asigură finanțări avantajoase. De curând am aflat, cei de la BCR au niște programe în România pentru finanțări care presupun economie de energie cu 10-30% sau mobilitate electrică. De asemenea, instalarea de soluții de producere de energie pentru autoconsum. Toate astea pot fi finanțate la condiții avantajoase, evident respectând EU taxonomii. Ce anume? Măcar unul din criterii, avem o contribuție importantă, respectăm principiul do no significant harm pentru celelalte 5 și avem de asemenea implementate minimum safeguards. Companii ca și CBRE pot evalua ca și parte independentă în ce măsură proiectele și companiile sunt aliniate cu EU taxonomii și prin asta vor obține finanțări avantajoase. Există variante, mai sunt date și de cei care sunt clienții noștri. Dacă ei vin cu cerințe clare pe partea de ESG, trebuie să adaptăm soluțiile ca să întâlnim nevoile lor. Avem chiriași în clădirile de care ne ocupăm, care vin cu strategii clare de reducere a amprentei de carbon, cu strategii legate de partea de social, de accesibilitate și incluziune, programe pentru integrarea și comunităților locale și dezvoltarea economiilor în comunitățile locale. Da, deci atâta timp cât clientul cere, cât banca mă ajută, cu siguranță pot să integrez toate principiile astea de ESG, să pot dezvolta.
Mulțumim, Alina, mulțumim, Carlo, încă o dată. De asemenea și telespectatorilor noștri, vedem că producția este importantă dacă vrem să avem bogăție și această creștere economică sustenabilă, dincolo de componenta emisiilor de CO2. Mulțumesc încă o dată invitaților și telespectatorilor, vă doresc o zi bună în continuare. La revedere!